Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This thing called hypnotherapy is amazing in how it can help you heal, get rid of bad habits, and so much more. Now, we've talked about that before. We're going to dig back into hypnotherapy. I'm like a hypnotherapy champion cheerleader. I tell everybody it's fantastic and can really, really move your life forward. But there's also something else out there, another modality that can do a lot in many of the same areas, and that's called EMDR. And she offers that hypnotherapy and much more, helps people all the time. She's Victoria Deeks, and she's back with us. Welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. So we can circle back to hypnotherapy in a moment. We've talked about that before. And for anybody that's afraid of hypnotherapy, I'm going to say right now, stop. Stop. It's fantastic. Nobody can control your mind. So put that on the pause button. Let's move over to EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I've heard a lot about this. I don't know a lot about it. Can you enlighten us? What is it?
Sure.
What is it? What is it good for?
So it was developed in like 1980 by a psychologist, and she was experiencing something that was kind of traumatic and moving for her in a thought. And she suddenly realized when she'd move her eyes back and forth from side to side that there was kind of a release. And so what it is it's your brain processing that thought or that experience. So they use it a lot for trauma. And trauma can be something that you experienced when you were really little, like 2 or 3, that you might remember it. But if you remember it as an adult, you go like, well, that was no big deal. But to you at the time, it was horrendous because you're so little. And so your brain's always taking things in through your 5 senses, and it's processing it. And so it'll go. So I always make the example of if I'm driving around and I see a truck, the area I live in has a lot of trucks. And so my brain goes, okay, I don't need to save that. And so it can dump it. Or if I see one that's like, oh my gosh, I've got to tell so-and-so about that, then I save that. But if you go through a trauma, your brain's trying to process it and it like freezes. It doesn't know what to do with it. So you kind of store those things in a basket, say, and then you'll go through other things through your life that could be huge things, car wreck or just different things. But small traumas can have a cumulative effect and build within that basket. So that if something comes up and you go, somehow it takes you back to that original experience where you stored something in some part of your body and with the thought. So it could be you go through something and you think like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And you feel it in your chest. And so other things will kind of bring you that same sensation, but it'll seem like out of proportion because it's locked to that original issue. So with EMDR, you go back to the first or the worst issue as far back as you can, and then you focus on it and you do this processing. Like we use these tappers, so it just goes buzz, buzz, buzz in your hands, and you do it for a certain cycle, and then you kind of come back to go out, but you open your eyes, and as the therapist you go, okay, what came up or what did your brain bring? And then you present that. And it's nice because it's not talk therapy. So you don't have to rehash a big event. You could just go, oh, I remember when Susie came over. And as a therapist, you don't need to know anymore. And because they'll bring that experience and they might talk a bit about it, but then it's like, okay, go with that. So then they go back down and your brain will just bounce all over and you'll present these kind of a series of negative things maybe, or overpowering. And at the end, it's completed because all of a sudden they'll come up with these kind of positive aspects to it. Like,
Hmm.
wow, I made it through that. Or, this wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was, things like that. But your brain's also reprocessing in the same fashion during REM sleep, that rapid eye movement sleep. So it's always trying to work through these things. But this is powerful too, in that you can kind of seat positive things. So, like a calm, relaxed place. And you can build that in with that same brain processing so that you get somebody to bring up their own little cue word to take them to their calm place. And they can bring that up anytime of the day or experience, or to just kind of let some stuff kind of wash away.
Wow. Fascinating. So
Yeah.
I love the fact that you don't have to go back to it. When you do hypnotherapy, sometimes you do. You see, at least in my experience, you see those situations come back and they might not be bad. Like I first time I ever did hypnotherapy, I knew, like most of us, childhood, going back there. Not that it was that bad, but there was things like I got bullied. My parents got divorced when I was very young. So I saw those images there. And some of them can be emotional. Like I saw an image of me on the playground by myself. Nobody wanted to play with me. I think I might have been like 7 or 8, because I got bullied. With this, though, you don't have to confront it so much. You don't have to talk about it or anything. You Are you back there though? Like, how do we get back there? And how do we decide what's going on? Let's say you have fear of abandonment. Let's go hypothetical, anything. Um, do you go back to figuring out where that came from with EMDR, or do you not need to?
Well, there's a process of getting to the point of doing the EMDR.
Okay.
So you have people kind of do a timeline of events in their life.
Okay.
And so, like I was saying, you try to get to the first or the worst and get back there. And it doesn't have to be really clear, but it could be, oh, I just remember just being so overwhelmed, in this one room or something like that. And then with the brain processing, it could, uh, the event might build, you could see more of it,
Okay.
or your brain will take you someplace else for some reason.
Hmm. And I've done that before. Well, part of that, I think it was called a timeline regression,
Mm-hmm.
where maybe it was part of NLP. I'm not really sure, but I was taken back. But the person I was working with had no idea. She goes, go, go. And I believe it was 5 negative words that we're gonna find on your timeline, and we're gonna eradicate those feelings. Sadness, anger, maybe guilt, shame, whatever. Um, I saw the images in my mind to the first time. I think I experienced them, but the other person, I didn't have to say a word. It's just think of that moment as far back as you can go. But again, don't have to talk about it. Don't have to go there. Just
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah, because presenting all these things that can carry some shame or guilt or feel like you're being
Sure.
judged, it's like you don't have to give all that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm. So with EMDR, now I thought you said you hold something in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
There's
always need to?
there's other ways of doing it. You can cross your arms across your chest and tap your shoulders on either side. Um, there's things like with kids you can do with having them have a basketball and bounce it between one hand and the other, just bounce on the ground or even toss it back and forth, because your brain's moving as you're moving from side to side with your body.
Why are you doing that? Is it we're taking it away from our mind, or how's that working?
So that with it's how your brain's constantly trying to process things, and if you can get back to it without it freezing and stalling, and getting your brain to, instead of just stopping, it's doing that side to side movement. So it's processing like it should. It's moving it, out. And it's not to get rid of memories, but it's like you could remember something again and just see it as it was and not have it be such an emotional impact.
So it seems like you go back to that situation, but you change the way your mind processes it.
Right. Right.
Okay. Hmm. So it's almost like you're hitting the pause button, you're changing the computer program and hitting play again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm. What EMDR? It's more trauma centered.
So the focus that it was built for initially, but like I was saying, getting to a calm place, like so my example with that is there's you try and think of the place where it was your calmest. It could be a real place or it could be a just in your imagination, but you bring it alive in through your five senses. And so mine is there's this beach I just love, and there's nobody on it usually, and I can hear the waves. And being a nurse practitioner and knowing that damage that sun can do, I slather myself in no sunscreen oil. And then so somebody goes, well, and I was like, I can't smell the ocean or anything. And uh the person I was working with goes, what does your oil smell like? I was like, oh yeah, there's only one I'll buy. So you just build that big, and then you do the back and forth stimulation. And for this kind of stuff, you do it for a shorter amount of time. It goes side to side is one, and so you do it about 10 times, and then you come back and bring up anything new, and then you get to the place it's like, okay, what's your cue word? So my cue word is waves. And I tell this story all the time, and right before I'm going to tell it, I go, okay, it's not going to work as well as it usually does. But I swear, if I wasn't talking or doing something with you, I'd just be like slouched in my chair, so relaxed. And it's just something you have then.
So I want to make sure I got this right. It's pretty fascinating. So in in reprogramming your reaction to a situation, there's a word that goes along with it. And is it almost like a lack of a better description, a safe word, a refocus word that when you're going down that road again, you're feeling some, anxiety, whatever you're dealing with, you say that word and it's like, oh, I'm back. I'm resetting.
Yeah. So if you're in the
Cool.
middle of like a confrontation with somebody, or you're driving and you're getting uptight, you can use that word, and it
Wow.
just kind of dampens things. Yeah.
Do you have to physically say it or can you just be thinking it?
You can think it. Yeah.
That is beyond cool. It really is. Because now you have something, the escape hatch, I
Yeah.
guess, just by
Yeah.
saying that word. Wow, I didn't know that was connected to it. To your knowledge, are there any other modalities that use that kind of situation where there's a word that kind of brings you back to center or gets you out of a situation?
Well, I think hypnotherapy can do it as well. You could say when you get yourself into a situation that comes up, something that you're working on, that you can, bring well, this is what I do. I do that EMDR, and then I'll use whatever word they come up with and get it more centered in hypnotherapy. So they could kind of go back to whatever situation or whatever their goal is. And if it's too much, you can bring in that resource, that strength that's developed, and expand it.
Fascinating. How do you make the determination of what modality to use with somebody?
So the you people usually contact me for hypnotherapy, but EMDR is becoming way more well known. And so I just like presenting it as an option. And I don't think there's anything bad about, getting a calm place or a peaceful place, that kind of stuff. And then if I'm going to do it with trauma, there's more steps to go through, and having people, make sure that they're going to be able to cope with what comes up,
Hmm.
and it's not going to trigger, something that's too much.
How does somebody know it's trauma? Just from a conversation with you, or I guess, how do you know it's trauma?
So I think trauma is something that you determine for yourself in some ways, some event or situation you just can't get over, or you're have some, too much focus on, or um, something like that. But also just listening to people and their histories. And some people just go through such crazy situations when they're little, with dysfunctional families and things, and they might be so flat about talking about it
Mm,
that you can see, like, if you want them to maybe dig a bit deeper, if that's what they're interested in doing and able to do. So, but traumas aren't necessarily like a car crash or seeing something horrible happen. It could just be like, if you're a 3-year old and your family's usually like calm and quiet and easygoing, and then your dad's fraternity brother comes over and they start getting really wild and crazy, and you're just like, what is happening? You just don't know, and so you don't feel safe or whatever. So that's a trauma.
mm. We talk about dysfunctional families, and but let's put it out there. If somebody says my family is perfect, there's no issues whatsoever, you're lying. Let's just say that you're lying. You're not being real with yourself. But it could be something so non-threatening in terms of trauma that could have created such a major block for somebody. You know,
Right.
it's amazing how we've talked about that before, where you could be a kid and you just heard somebody say something from the kitchen. You're in the living room, you're 5 years old, you're watching TV, and it just clicked in your head. You internalized it. And now, in turn, we're talking about your mind is like a program, computer program, and it's still running that kid program, but you're an adult now. Now you're trying to
Right.
apply it to adult situations, but that was all back there, but it's still going around in your mind.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Fascinating stuff. Where did you, I know you have a medical background,
Uh-huh.
but where did your fascination of the mind all start?
um so I think it's, just growing up and being a teenager and all the things that you go through, and good or bad choices, and why you choose those paths. And so a lot of it's, coping skills you develop. And then, just getting into, you know, I do more primary care than anything, and just seeing things that people come up with, physical problems that you can see that have been probably, come on because of their lack of coping skills, or just habits that they've developed so they can just get through life. And so it's so I just think it's really interesting with getting people to change their course of being when they're younger, and seeing things that, you could make different choices than maybe something your parents did, and that you see as like, well, that's not that unusual. It'd be like, well, wait a minute.
Well, it's not unusual for that person because that's all they
Right.
know.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's all interesting, and just the way people perceive health and illness. And so my dad got a bad spinal cord injury when I was really young. So I was in kindergarten, and
Hmm.
he dove into a lake and he hit his head, but he came up and he was okay. And I think what happened was he did this hyperextension of his spinal cord. So he started developing this uh, neuropathy that went from outside in, so like from hands in. And they thought he had MS, and they thought he had, some other things. And he ended up being in the hospital for like 8 months, which had never happened now. And then having the ups and downs from that, him coming back from that to an extent. And so my mom always said, that her husband was ill when he had this illness. And I was like, he's not ill. He's come to a new way of being. And if you're always thinking that he's ill or seeing people as ill, that really depletes their, I think, perception of who they are and how they can come across and function in the world.
They become ill. It's,
yeah.
If you subscribe to the notion that we create our own reality, or those around us help create that reality. If you're telling somebody, he's ill, he's ill, okay, he's got some challenges, but they can be overcome. But if you keep, it's almost like, whack-a-mole. The mole comes up and you take the hammer, you keep hammering him down. I don't mean just in your situation, just in general.
Yeah.
Somebody comes up, hey, I'm dead. Whack him down. You're ill. Dealing with an illness over here. Got illness. But it was just an accident, an affliction, and then you deal with the aftermath of that. You talk about the sun. I have basal cell skin cancer. Been dealing with it for 25 plus years. It just this pops up, have some surgery or use some topical cream, and it goes away, and then we're on to the next one. It's a way of life now. It's like, I expect it. But like you said, I did it to myself, back when I was younger, didn't worry about the sun. Until later in life, I find out, oh, my mother had it, my aunt had it, my dad had it. But you deal, but I could just say, oh, look at this. I have this. It's bad. No, and we'll get through it on to the next thing. But the realization that we have is all of the challenges that sometimes we have in our mind can be taken out by these modalities. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And it's nothing new. EMDR, I'm hearing about it in the last year. You said it goes back to 1980.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been around for a long time. Yeah. It's that whole spectrum of ease and disease, trying to get to that middle. It's just kind of a flow that you can address from different aspects.
Wow. Your credentials, I mean, I could look at them on your website right over here, but I'd have to scroll because there's so many of them. I'm sitting here like, all right, let's keep going. Right down, from your hypnotherapist certification, master hypnotist, certified member in all different areas, bachelor of science, master's in nursing, on and on and on and on. I love the fact that you do have the medical background and you pair that with hypnotherapy. Very unique, rare to find. You're the go-to person. How do we go to you? How do we find you?
So you can go to my website, centraloregonhypnotherapy.com. You could give me a call, and I can never remember the phone number. It's
971-221. Is that it?
It's so bad.
It's on your website, 3730.
Okay.
I'm going to say it. If it's on there, it can't be a number I shouldn't be giving out. It's on our website, 971-221-3730. And your website, how do we find that?
So you can Google it, Central Oregon Hypnotherapy. And I'm in Bend, Oregon, but I do things telephone and getting virtual set up. So
yeah. Wow. Wonderful talking with you, refreshing, and love your insight and your knowledge. And it's here. It's been around. Just got to open everybody's eyes and take a look at how you can reprogram this stuff that's not supporting you in your mind and move your life forward. It's just fantastic. And it's worked for me, Victoria. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.